We are a podcast for product marketers and B2B SaaS who feel misunderstood of what they do.
From someone who truly gets what you do and
basically help you feel less like a misfit, being unignorable in your role. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of We're Not Marketers. Season 4. We're extremely excited to have our next guest. But before that, we need to do around the room to make sure that everyone's there. So Gab Bugeaud, Sales Deck Associate. I'm trying to help our promotion here, so we're doing what we can. And I'll pass it up to one of my co-hosts, Eric.
Yeah, Eric Holland. I am the Franken manager. Little Franken stack of everything. Since we got a special guest, had to throw that word out there. Zach, tell me who you are.
Hey, this is Zach on the line, the sales water lad, making sure our reps are properly hydrated for the calls that they don't get connected on. But I'm going to pass it over to Gab over here.
Thank you. So our next guest is someone that knows very well the podcasting game. I consider him the ultimate SaaS marketer. He's from Ottawa, so we're both using Maple money, and lived and breathed digital marketing for a while. He worked at huge household names like WordPress, Clipfolio, Close, and Pelago, led marketing teams and data team, and today has one of the biggest podcasts in marketing, and I guess we can say the number one in MarTech. Please give us a warm welcome to Phil Gamache from Humans of MarTech.
What's up, boys? Excited to be here. Super pumped.
Happy to have you on, Phil.
Awesome. And we'll start things that we're always starting. Are product marketers actually marketers? Why or why not?
Yeah, this is probably the only question that I've prepped an answer for, or thought about it, meditated on this answer. And I tried not to influence my answer by too many of the previous guests' answer, because there were some really good ones. But in the past couple of weeks, I tried not to listen to the recent ones. So maybe some of this stuff has been said already, but my thoughts immediately go to what the hell is a marketer? Is someone that works in marketing. What the hell is marketing? So a lot of definitions in digital marketing today, but I'm a foundations guy and I go back to the 4 Ps, and the 4 Ps are promotion, price, placement, and guess what? You guessed it. Product is one of the core pillars of marketing. And so I'm on the side of thinking that product marketers are marketers because product is a core pillar of marketing. What the hell are we doing in marketing if there's no product, if there's no service? Now, I think that your angle is really cool on the show because I agree that similar to MarTech folks, marketing ops folks, a lot of marketing ops folks don't identify as marketers because especially in bigger teams, like we're oftentimes like separate from the more generalist marketers that are on the team. We work on different stuff. We service them. We help them. We train them. We're way more technical than the average marketer. So a lot of the times in bigger teams, like MarTech folks don't associate themselves as like your typical marketer, especially in like big enterprise. A lot of engineers are part of MarTech. And I think product marketing is similar in that sense because product marketers are a very specialized breed of practitioners. They're not your generalist average marketer. You guys are experts in messaging and crafting copy and positioning and frameworks and being customer obsessed. But at the end of the day, like most companies out there, SMBs and startups, and I don't have like hard data on this, but I'm guessing most product marketers fall under the marketing team. And even though you don't consider yourself a marketer, oftentimes you're on the marketing team. And if I was like a first hire for a marketer and I got 2 headcounts, probably hiring a marketing ops person and a product marketer, and they'd sit in marketing. Like they wouldn't be on the product team. They wouldn't be on sales, right? Even though your role is bridging all those departments, you're technically in marketing. And whether you like identify as 100% a marketer, that I feel like the question is more like you're a specialized breed of marketer that does marketing-ish stuff, right? Like messaging, writing stuff on the website, go to marketing. That's my take on that.
Phil, you said earlier. No, Phil, you know what Phil said really quick though? He said it's 4 Ps. But just like the name Phil, the product in the 4 Ps has been silent for a long time.
Well, yeah, and you know what's funny? So now I'm so jaded. Anytime someone's like, "Well, what is a marketer?" I actually was driving in. I'm in Pennsylvania, so I was driving in the boonies and passed like a market, and on their sign said "looking for marketers," like someone to actually work at the market. So I laughed because I was like, "Oh, so we really aren't marketers." But no, I think that's necessarily a new take, but I do appreciate you leaning on, what did marketing start out as? What do we all go to college for? And when they teach you marketing, what are the some of the first lessons you go through? And the 4 Ps are definitely one of them. Um, Curious, how many of those Ps have you actually like been involved with and either owned or like influenced to a high degree?
Yeah, I think price is probably the one that I have the least amount of experience in. Price is typically, in my experience, especially in SaaS, different teams. Like sometimes there's like a revenue team, and sometimes sales is like a big proponent of having a hand in price. But I agree with you, Zach. I think that it's a silent product oftentimes. But I guess like I'm lucky in a sense that I've always played a role in product, and part of that maybe is luck because I've always or usually worked at a company where I am also like dog feeding that product. Like my first role at Clubfolio was like a BI SaaS tool, dashboards for marketers and a bunch of different verticals. So I was like an avid user of our own product. And so I was like versed in being able to talk about unique value propositions and helping out with copy and all that stuff. And same thing with close, because the CRM for sales teams had to like wear a sales hat a little bit, but it wasn't too far away from marketing. I was like marketing ops. So like oftentimes the biggest tech piece that you're working with is a CRM. And so we were selling a CRM. I was well versed in that product too. Then I went to WordPress, and I was like a lifelong WordPress user still today. Very power user in that product also. So I guess like it's luck, because it's not the case for a lot of folks, right? If you're not selling to other marketers, you probably aren't as close to that product. I think a lot of my friends are like developer world, like selling products to developers, and they're so far removed from like that the ICP and the use cases of it, and that makes it really hard, and you're relying on other folks to do that. So I guess part of it is luck a little bit, but yeah, I've often played a role on product, like trying to get like as early of a seat as possible on like the roadmap discussions, how things are changing, because like I've often played a role in like lifecycle marketing. I'm a big fan of being as close to customers as possible, distilling a lot of the research from product marketers and trying to be on the roadmap and be that empathy barometer that like lifecycle teams like try to be. So yeah, I guess maybe it's luck, but yeah, always played a role in obviously promotion product, less on the price there, but placement's a bit of a weird one. Like it's more distribution and more associated with like physical products on the online world. I guess that's like the website and the actual like distribution of it. So went to the app world a little bit more at WordPress and my most recent startup. So yeah, I'd say price, the one I touched on least.
Nice. Sounds like you're more of a product marketer than I thought there. Getting in on the roadmap, man. That's a dream that only few of us can actually achieve, right, guys?
Exactly, yeah.
And he said it so casually too. He's yeah, I get it on the roadmap. I'm like, God damn.
Mic drop, right?
Part of discussions, I didn't say like steering roadmap decisions, but like nice enough to get an invite here and there.
That's why I said product markers that P is silent, because we don't really see the invite.
I got a kind of question. I know not a lot of our audience is marketing ops, but I just started a new role and I'm actually working with someone who's in that role full time. And our first call was like, yeah, I don't really look at myself as part of the marketing team. And you echoed that too. And so like I think we feel that a lot of our audience feels that. What are some of the things that you're going through on that side of the fence and having to validate your work and prove why you should be there, and some of those things that you're going through? Would love to hear that from the other side.
Yeah, I think it depends a lot on like the size of company. When I was at smaller startup teams like at Close and Clipfolio, I was wearing a bunch of different hats, and PMM was one of them, marketing ops was one of them, demand gen was one of them, right? Like when you're a scrappy team of 3-ish people, you're doing all of the different roles and you're just like exchanging hats. So you're on the marketing team, you're doing messaging, you're like creating email automations, and you're like wearing all of the hats, right? So that's less of a thing on that side of it. When you get into bigger companies, then there's a lot of discussions about like marketing ops trying to be less of a service org. In a lot of companies, we live to service sales and marketers, and we have like ticket systems, and marketers can just, hey, fix this bug, or I want to add this thing to the lead scoring model, or we want to like shop for a conversion rate optimization tool. And so it's oftentimes like marketing teams, similar to you guys, like on the product side, product teams are coming up with the roadmap, and you guys get it handed to you much later in the process, and you're like, the hell am I doing with this? It's in bigger teams, marketing ops is very much like that also. Like marketing in a silo is coming up with roadmaps and the campaigns they want to do next year, and they're just like handing this list of tickets and requests to marketing ops, and it's make this happen type of thing. And so this is like a similar lifelong battle that a lot of marketing ops folks try to get a seat at this strategic table, so that we aren't like this like ticket center, and we're not just like servicing marketers, but we're looking at like business objectives and saying like, all right, if one of our main objectives next year is increasing retention, we have abandoned cart flows that are gathering dust in our automation tool that we haven't optimized in so long. Let's like take that upon ourselves to run that program, and let's buy a new tool to add propensity models on this. So we're not sending it to everyone, we're sending it to different buckets of people. And so that's one of the like similar calling cries for marketing ops folks than PMMs, but yeah, much different in smaller companies than at bigger companies, I think.
It sounds like a lot of like hypothesis driven thinking. And that's what resonates with me when I was hearing that explanation from you, Phil.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Especially when it comes to like tooling and new stuff, what are we trying to do with this? Do we have something existing today that we can hack together that isn't going to take 6 months on the marketing ops roadmap and like $100K in the next 2 years and locking us into a tool that maybe we're going to use for this one use case? Yeah, like I think that like experimentation is a big part of marketing ops and MarTech too. And I think that's where we overlap a lot with PMMs also, like experiments on the product, but also on the website in terms of messaging, in terms of new channel. It all starts with hypotheses for sure.
I would like to maybe do a 180 because I have a question I want to ask you, Phil.
Hold on, I just want to do the sound effects. Skirt, skirt. All right, you're good.
Excellent. The recurring term that goes on our pod, at least especially in the later season, which is around AI and the use of it. And in that case, I think it's even more specific because we're both podcast co-hosts, and we are using AI to generate cover art, automating a lot of stuff, repurposing clips, and all of that. So you believe that in the next 5 years, all of that execution will be mainly done through GenAI, and that most marketing tools will not have databases. So I'm curious to hear you more on how did you got to that prediction? Which guess or which topic brought you in that direction?
Yeah, that actually aren't my predictions. Those are my co-host's predictions. Daryl Alfonso, he joined the show at the top of 2025. We got together at the end of 2024, and we did like our last episode, 150, was with Daryl, like going deeper into those like 2 predictions and unpacking that. Daryl is like on the Mount Rushmore of marketing ops folks, and he's like a big conference talk speaker. And so that was one of his talks is like top 10 predictions for the next 5 years. And so those were 2 of his, but I agreed in most part with them. I think on the generative AI visual workflow builder is like a couple of things to unpack on that one. Generative AI, a lot of folks associate that to like content specific things like prompting an LLM to be able to give you content or give you a first draft and edit that. There's a whole world of using that and pairing it with visual workflows. And so a lot of marketing operations, marketing automation tools today are not prompt driven. They're very much like rule based systems. So person starts this workflow because they signed up for our product. Wait 2 minutes, check to see if this person has done anything in the product. If not, check if they have at least done this. If they have, send them an email about doing that. If they're already in the product, send them a push notification about getting like that. The whole thing is rule based. The human is instructing the system on if this, then that type of system. In this new like GenAI workflow builder world, a lot of these tools are playing around with this idea of instead of creating those rules and like mapping out all those workflows, you use a prompt engine to get you a first draft. And similar to doing it for the content side, you would say, I want to build an abandoned cart automation flow where if people hit this one data point and they haven't completed their purchase, I want you to help me build a workflow that sends 3 emails in the span of 3 weeks, and I want you to pull the content from this and from that. I've played around with 3 tools that have doing this. There's a lot more in this space, and it's interesting. It's not quite there yet. It's super janky, but I think like LLMs like 3 years ago were also very janky, and look at how crazy things are today. But I do think that like part of the future is going to be prompt engineering based in marketing operations and automation. And we get into the whole topic of AI agents, and I'm like far from a pro at this. And part of having my own podcast is interviewing people that are way smarter than me, way deeper in certain areas, and having them share some of those insights and like having a broader perspective from different experts. And our first episode this year in 2025 was with Austin Hay. He did a bunch of stuff in MarTech, worked at Branch, worked at Ramp, worked at mParticle. He sold his course to Reforge on MarTech, and now he's a partner and he teaches the MarTech course at Reforge. And we asked him a lot about AI agents because now he's building a CRM in that space, whatever. And he talked a lot about this idea of like ambient computing, or like instead of instructing and prompting AI agents to go do this and that, the future is basically just going to be AI agents that are connected to your operating system level, or they have integrations with like Notion or your project management tools, and they suggest things for you as opposed to you prompting them to do stuff for yourself. So I want you to create an AI agent workflow where every time a lead is created in a system, I want to push that to Clay. I want you to enhance that given like all these different data enrichment sources that we have plugged into Clay. And then I want you to create that record in the Salesforce, and I want you to like dedupe that and blah, blah, blah. Like you're still instructing the AI agents to do it. You're giving it a goal and it goes off and does its own thing. But Austin was really big on this idea of what if like in a couple of years, these systems are just like chilling in the back and they know you so well that they are the ones coming up with, hey, what if we were able to hook this to an iPass tool, and instead of you getting your reps to manually dedupe emails, you would have a system in place to do that. And hey, I noticed that a lot of the campaigns that went out recently, there's a lot of out of office email responses that came in. We're not doing anything with that data. I'm going to go off and create a workflow to categorize that data, figure out what is in that out of office, if there's a job title in there, a secondary contact, and we're going to add those folks to the database. So that I feel like is super exciting. But yeah, I don't know how interesting this is to the PMM folks, but on the whole like warehouse native, no databases, that's like a separate prediction. I can get into that if you guys are curious about that, but I'll pause there.
I have a clarifying question for you, Phil, and this follows up from our last conversation we had, and this is something I'm still wrestling with, is that with AI today, like a lot of us product marketers and marketers are very execution focused. We're treated like Google, where it's like we put in a question, we get an answer. And like the example you gave, it's I think a lot about like SQL. Like you can be really good at SQL, but if you don't know what you're looking for or what you're building for, then you're not going to find the right understanding. So when you were giving those examples you shared with there, I'm curious, what is like the frameworks that you have maybe learned so far or maybe borrowed from like previous practices in MarTech of, okay, this is what good should look like when I'm using AI to develop a project or solve a problem related within the marketing function?
Yeah, I think what you're asking is almost like a prompt engineering question. And like when this was like hyped up couple years ago, a lot of folks like rolled their eyes at it, prompt engineering, whatever, and they were just using ChatGPT or Claude or whatever LLM. And if you're like a power user of these LLMs, you quickly spot when other people are just using the basic prompts, because they're doing the stuff you were doing like 3 or 6 months ago. And you've noticed that ChatGPT says all the time different words and uses M dashes and uses like semicolons in all of the titles. And you just like, pick up on some stuff, and especially like sentence structure. Like ChatGPT is so bad at like writing authentic, like human sounding content. Every single paragraph is Phil thinks that not everyone is made out to be a marketing operations person, but in fact, like these like contradictory statements like in every sentence. And so I think that's like part of the answer there is just trial and error and learning through listening and reading what other folks are doing on it. There's a couple of like really good podcasts. Marketing Against the Grain, he's the CMO at Zapier, or no, he's back at HubSpot now, but he's a big fan of Anthropic and Claude, and he does like visual workflows pretty much like every week on LinkedIn, like showing some of the stuff that he's building and playing around with. Some folks I follow have like pretty decent like prompt templates, but I like document a lot of my stuff, especially on the podcast. Like I'm a heavy user of GPT. I've actually recently started dabbling in Claude in the past like 6 months to help me with the first drafts of posts on LinkedIn and like the titles on some of the video clips that I'm posting on YouTube. But I was like an early adopter of trying to convert audio only episodes into a blog post. And this is actually an idea that my former co-host John Taylor had, because like we were like early, compared to most, like early adopters of ChatGPT, and like trying to figure out like, can we like create this blog post that's like SEO optimized? We usually ask like 10 to 15 questions in an hour long episode. There's almost like 10 headers in that blog post, and it's almost like blog passages. So we started figuring out a prompt to feed a question to ChatGPT and then the answer that our guest gave us. And through a lot of trial and error, we have a good prompt now on just create this question and answer into a blog post passage. This is the context of the other passages in that paragraph. It's a podcast episode. Don't use any of these words, add a ton of perplexity and burstiness. And so eventually, like, we've gotten a lot better at it. Like, I look at some of the earlier blog posts that we did, and it's super cringy and looks like a lot of the stuff that you see on LinkedIn today. But yeah, like, I don't have a secret sauce answer for this. I think a lot of it is like through trial and error. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, Zach.
No, it does. I think it's great to hear that, because what I've seen on LinkedIn is that people immediately want like the tips, tricks, and hacks. And it's like you said, we got to put the work in. You can't just sit there and douse yourself in protein powder and sit on the bench and expect the gains to hit you.
Yeah. There's a lot of really cool courses out there too. We had her on the podcast last year. Her name is Brittany Muller. She's a former SEO scientist at Moz who fully converted into AI and LLMs. And she's essentially on this mission now of teaching marketers how to use AI in a responsible way, and like knowing the biases that are in all of the models. Like Wikipedia is a big source for a lot of these LLMs, but she is really big on, she has one part of her course where she teaches prompt engineering. And a lot of the template advice you'll see out there is, if you want ChatGPT to be really good at giving you an answer, you need to like instruct ChatGPT to be a therapist or be like an expert marketing social marketer that has 10 years in LinkedIn. And some of her stuff is just total bullshit. Like ChatGPT, you don't need to like instruct it to be something. Like you need to give it context and historical documentation and sources to follow up with, so that it's not always original thinking. But yeah, there's a lot of bad advice out there, like you said.
It sounds a lot like when you get feedback at work and it says, be more clear in your writing. And you're like, what does that mean? Fuck it, go do it. It sounds like the same analogy.
Give me PTSD. Yeah, I got this one. Yeah, you just need to write better. What do you mean? Yeah, I don't know. Just write better. Yeah, okay.
I had a manager tell me one time, stop asking him questions about his feedback. He's, you know what? Just process it. And just I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm like, that's what I want to know.
That's what I think. So I think when you're putting the reps, there's no limit to how much you can do and how far you can go with AI, right? Just in terms of use case of what you talked about the pod, this is something we're actively doing as well. So I think, especially for PMMs, when you take content into perspective, there's no limit how far you can push that in terms of repurposing. And we're only getting there. Like, one of my favorite quote about AI is, it's the shittiest it is right now. And it doesn't feel shitty, right? It feels super cool. But I think it's just like one of those big market shift that we have to think more about how we use it. And when you use it very surface level, it gives a lot of bad stuff. As you said, like, there's tons of mistakes in GPT. I disagree very much with the M dash, like, to the point where I'm using a Windows computer. I know I'm old and I should definitely shift to Mac, but it doesn't have an M dash. So I'm always copy pasting it. It's to that point where I need absolutely to use it on post. What are some ways you think that PMMs, in terms of distribution or in terms of collaboration with MarTech, could leverage AI just by themselves and collaborating better with MarTech by using AI, or just with some tips?
Yeah, the first one that comes to mind is helping you with summarizing customer research. I oftentimes have to do this at a company because the PMM's too busy doing other stuff, like trying to get a seat at the table for roadmap discussions. But they're often like sitting on this gold mine of customer research, and they use it a little bit to help out with their framework. And then the framework is the thing that's distributed widely to the rest of the marketing org and the sales org. But like that, it's a bit of a black box. Like, how did that framework come together? And oftentimes it's, man, like, I can send you a link to the Google Drive with the 76 interviews that we did with customers, and you can click and open each folder if you want and read the whole transcript of it. No one's going to do that, and the PMM doesn't want to do that because obviously, like, it's super time consuming. Today, it's so easy to feed a lot of those transcripts from customer interviews, whether it's like in Gong or you're just like transcribing that in Zoom or whatever, and like prompting it to create like something of a summary that you can share around with folks. And the marketing team doesn't have to sit in and listen to the full hour-long conversation with the 76 customers that you did to figure out like how that framework came to be. But you can use AI to, I've uploaded using JSON 17 conversations that I had with some of our customers in this ICP or this persona, summarize like the key insights from some of those conversations, and like that type of stuff, and sharing those things more broadly gives you that ammo to support the framework that you're putting in front of folks. Like, I've often been handed a framework and, hey, email guy, I'll put this together, update some of our messaging. And it's okay, cool, but like, how many customers did you chat with? Did you chat with like your mom about this? Like, how many customers were actually involved in this? Like, the key points that you're bringing up here, how many people said these things? What were the actual words that customer used? Like, instead of PMMs manually doing this today to show like the background of the frameworks, it's so easy to feed, like with a couple of tweaks in your prompt, like different ways of summarizing that information and then looking out to stuff if folks want to review it. But I think that's like a huge opportunity to have PMMs just take those raw transcripts from conversations and interviews and customer research and turn it into summaries that people will actually read, find interesting, and then buy into the frameworks and the positioning.
Yo, can you give me? Can we go deeper on this specifically? Like,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna lay you out the example. Right, start a new role, positioning and messaging sucks. Gonna be my first project. So, literally before our call, I'm looking through Gone calls. I made it through 1.5 so far in about 2 hours, maybe 2.5. And I'm taking copies of that transcript and putting it into a Figma board, which I've prioritized in a specific column, 6 columns. One for the problem, one for like capabilities and benefits, and then 4 other things, which I won't bore you with. But the ultimate is that, hey, I want to take all this information. I'm going to then put that into frameworks. I'm going to deliver those frameworks. I also have some like enablement things and just like buyer journey things I want to highlight. Why and how can I stop doing my process of like manually going through this, dumping it into Figma, and then of course the long tail of what you said is distributing that to everyone and getting buy-in.
Yeah, so
You have, like,
I
some
would
tactical things for me.
Yeah, I would start with exporting those transcripts from those customer interviews in Gong. Like that's step number one. And figuring out if there's any type of structure to that export. Like oftentimes the person running the interviews has like this cheat sheet of questions that they typically ask. And so maybe it's always the first question, the same first question, and it's like similar questions in there. And so depending on the structure of that export, like you decide how to prompt ChatGPT or Claude to help you out with summarizing that information. That would be my first step, summarizing individual customer interviews. If it's like always the same questions and in that structured interview, I would start by like telling Claude, this is an interview I did with my customer. This is my company. This is our existing positioning and messaging. This is the first answer that I asked this customer. This is what you need to know about this customer, company size, how long they've been at their job, use case for using our product, like whatever information you have on them, and then feeding the answer and instructing the LLM to give you a summary and like the main takeaways that are most important for improving messaging or frameworks or positioning. And then you're doing that like question by answer, like usually in the prompt, it's this is what I want you to do. Here's the question. You paste that question from the transcript. Here's the answer. You paste that answer. And I have it in a doc right now where I'm basically just like going question by question, answer by answer. In 20 minutes, I've gone through an hour-long transcript and I've turned it into a 4,000 word summary. I don't need all 4,000 of those words though. So the next step would be once you have 4, 5, 6 of those, you can attach them to Claude or ChatGPT, and you could say, here are 4 different interviews that we've done. They're 4 different people. Maybe they're the same people. So instruct them on who those people are and what your end goal is, and see what type of summary they can come up with by combining all 4 of those insights. And you can prompt them for things like, I want you to use the specific language that the customer person or the user used in those interviews. Or is there similar language that keeps popping up? Are there similar problems, similar use cases that are popping up? Are they all different? Maybe there's like an element that's similar to some of them. And so see what that first draft is, read through it. Is it something a marketer or another person would be using for that stuff? If not, go back, tweak it a little bit again. But that's where I would start. Like it all starts with that raw transcript, and it helps when you're the person like going off and doing those interviews yourself, and maybe it's Gong calls, right? And like that one's a bit biased because not everyone on Gong calls is going to end up buying, and so it's not always your perfect ICP, but that's where I would start on like the raw transcript.
I really like that. Yeah, that's Phil. What I was hearing when you were walking through that is that when you're saying like, because it's one of those things where someone says give AI context, and if you're not familiar with an LLM, then you're like, what does that mean? Should I just describe like photos? But like you're saying, you're giving concrete examples. Give it requirements, give it examples, show what good looks like. And I think it's like you are essentially like, and what makes it easier to do that is when it sounds like when you're a subject matter expert on the craft. Example being like, I can't put on a pair of LeBrons and go play on my one. Like you gotta know the game. You gotta put the work in. And I think that's sometimes the missing piece when we think about prompt engineering or AI. I'm just gonna stop right there because I might be wrong in saying that. So I'm just curious like what you all might be thinking that piece when I said that.
Well, yeah, no, I totally agree.
Yeah. First thing that came to my mind was like, as you're going through the process, it's like, I know what questions I'm looking for as I'm going through the Gong thing most of the time. And so I need to then like assert those things, right? Like, and like you said, Zach, my knowledge, my expertise of what I'm looking for, I need to like deliver that and be very explicit. And I can get those answers very easily. Like I can imagine now once I feed them, hey, I'm looking for where they talk about the problem. I'm looking for specific use cases they're talking about. I'm looking for issues where the sales rep started talking about a feature that was never communicated as a problem in the first place. All of those things are going to come out for me, as opposed to like me just saying like, tell me 5 interesting things about this sales call. You know, like you adding that level of your own expertise, I think is the secret sauce that I picked up from your breakdown and how to make that work.
Yeah, I think it's totally worth like spending a lot of time on that first one that you do and getting it right, because you can use that after for future prompts as examples. So like in some of your examples, if you pull out like this one piece of language that a user used to describe the pain point and how your product is solving it, take the part in the raw transcript and in your prompt say, here's an example of what I want you to do. This is what the raw transcript said, and this is what I want the raw output takeaway to be, and this is the guide that I want it to look like. I think your point, Zach, is super cool. Like I'm a big fan of, like, for this PMM use case, like finding some of your favorite past frameworks, whether it's like at other companies or even this company, and say like, this is like the ideal scenario of what the end use case should look like, and describe why that fits your use case. But yeah, you can never give it too much context. I think that's like what gets you away from having the generic type of Gen AI content that you see everyone push on LinkedIn.
Yeah, or worse, like the AI comments, man, it's just becoming a nightmare.
I'm an asshole, and I call them out live now.
I did a meme to reuse when people are thinking they are bringing valuable content, but ultimately you're just like at scale, making sure no one's engaged with you.
I always laugh at them because like creators have this dilemma of calling them out, and they call them out and they never comment again, and you're like, oh, crap, like I didn't get engagement on this post except for that one AI comment. Do I want to call this guy out?
Exactly. And then you get a bunch of comments like that, and at sometimes you're on the fence and you're not sure if it's actually AI, but you'll have, screw it, I'll answer to that comment so people will think that I'm actually answering the rest of the comments that are insightful. But yeah,
you're gonna feel so bad one day when you say, "Oh, this is an AI comment." You could be like, "No, bro, this is how I write."
Yeah, exactly.
This is the example I gave it.
I'm a big fan of M dashes. I just copy pasted them again.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. I'm sure people are like, Gab posts are AI, and I'm like, damn guys. The thing is, my two.
Oh, sorry, Gab. I was gonna say I didn't want to hijack
okay.
another question, but I had one. But
Okay.
Gab, it's AI related, so I don't want to hijack the time here.
Me too. It's AI related.
All
So
right, go ahead.
let me just think about it just for a second. Okay. So basically, I'm working with someone, shout out Sam, and he studied at U Ottawa. But basically, what we're working on is something to grade messaging. So it's something we've been working on. It's basically, we added different factors. So for every score, there's a factor in relationship with different other elements and different stuff. And we've been working around it to just create a grid of scoring with different factors. But the thing is, there's a version that exists as a GPT, and there's also a version that exists with an LLM that we're trying to build. But the two are so, like, it got to volume 11 very fast in terms of like experimentation. So my question is, when is too much context? Like, if someone like a PMM is trying to go in AI, and just from your point of view, is there a limit where don't go above that way, because it's just going to be way too complicated in terms of the theory and the actual like outputs we can bring out of it?
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a case where there is too much context, like especially if you're like on a paid plan and you're like putting the context in like a big text file or like a big JSON file. Like the LLMs can ingest a lot of it, but they do operate better when you focus on the most important pieces. And so what I typically do is when a prompt gets too long, or like when one of my attachments about context gets too long, like I'll create a separate chat and I'll just be like, hey, this is the goal, this is what I'm trying to get you to do, and this is the prompt that I've been using. How do I improve this? Like, I'm using the LLM itself to improve the prompt in the future, like a meta version of doing this. But like the output is really cool because they dissect the prompt, and Claude is really good at this, like telling me like, hey, you've repeated the same thing 3 times in the file that you've given me. You can cut all of this paragraph. I would bring up this piece here because it's a bit buried right now. And I would like instruct me like, important, this is really important. Focus on this one piece here before you do anything else. There's like different things that they might tell you in the prompt to improve it in the future also. So if you do feel like it is too much context and you're spending too much time every single prompt, like uploading contextual documents, because like ChatGPT remembers stuff. Claude right now at the time of recording isn't good at like remembering history. Like they're purposely doing it, not for privacy reasons. But if you're using like a homegrown like a company version of ChatGPT and you've got memory enabled, you can save those things in there. Or you can create a custom ChatGPT specifically for the things that you're trying to do, and you don't have to like constantly upload the same context over and over again. It's saved in that one custom GPT. So I'd worry less about, am I giving it too much context, and try to focus on the end goal. And if you do think it gets like too cumbersome after a while, instruct the LLM to help you like tweak that prompt, make it better, make it shorter.
Going back to like prompt engineering, when you feel like you've been too far with the same prompt, with the same guide in particular, and now you're creating a new branch, just go back. How can I formulate this for you to understand better?
Yeah, exactly.
I got a quick question. Oh, go ahead.
Phil, I tactical and practical for me. All right. So another use case I found really interesting is around like your ICP. And obviously that's always a strenuous conversation amongst the org on who are the people actually closing and staying with us. And I'm finding that, you know, to have that information, I need to have a close relationship with marketing ops. So do you have any tips on how I can work with that side of the fence and pull that data so I can have those conversations a lot easier, particularly hopefully with AI?
Yeah, I think that'll depend a little bit on the customer or like the company makeup. Like it might actually be a data request or a project with the data team. Sometimes technical marketers, marketing ops folks will be working closely with the data team. So maybe it is on the marketing ops roadmap. So I like part number one would be making friends with the marketing ops person and figuring out like one or two people on the data team that you can be friends with, and just start incepting those ideas early on about the goal of your project and what you're trying to do. And I think that whether it's pulling that from the warehouse or maybe it already lives in the BI tool, figuring out like the right person to ask this question to, and it's a lot easier when you've made friends with those folks already. But I think on the ICP point specifically, there is something that you can do on the PMM side to help like guide that data discovery. Like ultimately it's probably going to end up on the plate of an analyst on the data team or on the marketing ops team. And they might go on this like fishing expedition, and the insights or the perspectives that come out of it, I know you guys hate the word insights, not be as valuable for you guys if you do spend the time on, okay, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to figure out like, is our ICP right? And there's a bunch of different ways we can slice this data and look at it. So I'm curious if you can help me figure out the best way to get significant results out of this. Do we want to look at the top like most active customers that we have in the database? And this is the demographics. These are the first party data that we have about them. What can we do with that data versus here are the people that have churned in the last 6 months? Maybe there's like correlative insights on top of that. Can we marry that data together? So again, it comes back to whether you're like giving context to an LLM or a data person who's helping you pull something for a project. It always helps when you explain the context and like you limit them, give them guardrails on that like data fishing expedition, so that when they're coming back with that first draft, you can make use of that first draft right away. Maybe it's not perfect, but like what takes a lot of time with these requests is often like non-specific examples of like projects related to data. The analyst goes off, does something, comes back with a first draft, and you're like, this is really interesting, but not at all what I was asking for. I need more about this, and I need more about all the added questions in that after that first draft. You could have taken the time to like describe that context initially. So I think that's something that would help and go a long way.
Another point, whether you're talking to the human or the AI, you got to know what you're doing first,
Yeah.
what you're asking for. So cool. Thanks, man.
Boys, we've gone through a full conversation without talking about MidJourney on the AI side. I know you.
Gosh.
You're still in DALL-E, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
I dabble in both.
Oh, nice.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I actually started in MidJourney, so that's where I got it all going. And
Did you make the
version
logo with
6.
DALL-E or MidJourney?
Oh, I do ours in DALL-E because I've got the prompt. It's very much consistent. But MidJourney, I like more. Like if I were to only use one, I'd use MidJourney. Like version 6 is just amazing compared to like I didn't even use version 5. I didn't like it, but 6, great.
I'm a big fan of MidJourney. There's something about DALL-E images that all look like DALL-E, especially you guys, I think are an exception because you're adding specific prompts and
The prompt was very deliberate.
Yeah, like you can just tell like on LinkedIn, everyone was just like, hey, instead of just like posting this text post, I'm gonna tell ChatGPT, hey, make me an image about someone in a meeting room like feeling chaotic, and then you see the same shit over and over again. It's like the same like basic DALL-E stuff. Even if you were to use MidJourney with that same basic prompt, you would get like a variety of different styles. But I think like what you guys do too on our show, like MidJourney is amazing for the style reference prompt in there, so you can MidJourney to like reference different episodes that you did. So when I'm prompting to create the cover art or like the images for some of the show, I've got 5 different URLs of previous episodes that I really liked. When I did the headers for your episode, when you guys were on my show, I prompted them with a couple of images that you guys did for the cover art, and I was just like asking MidJourney to describe them. Forget what it was, but like the one I remember is like psychedelic, like post-punk style images, and so I was prompting that in some of the headers. But yeah, we could do a full episode on MidJourney, Eric. Season 7.
Let's do it for sure.
That's the way. Phil, like you mentioned the podcast Humans of MarTech. Outside of the pod, how else can others like discover, hear, and bask in your greatness?
Yeah, LinkedIn is not my favorite spot in the world, but probably the spot that I'm forced to hang out in more often. I do think that like majority of people that find and discover the show outside of just like big podcast fans are people that are on LinkedIn and saw a stupid comment that I did on this other guy's post, or this like dumb poll about does MarTech have a capital T in there. So yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, probably the best spot.
Awesome, dude. Hey, it was great having you.
Yeah, man, this is super fun. Excited to see how this one turns out.
I can't wait to do your artwork.
Maybe we'll use MidJourney for that
punk.
one, you know?
No, I might use MidJourney for it.
Oh.
All right, guys. Well, that's another sweet episode, and more particularly how you can work with their marketing ops team of We're Not Marketers. See you next time.
Check out Humans of MarTech.
Thank you for listening to We're Not Marketers. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, review our podcast, and share this episode with other PMMs. Thanks again, and see you soon.